Hello everyone, you got Marcel here. I hope you're all having an awesome morning. So I got myself some new audio equipment, basically just some sound dampening boards and pop filters and stuff. Figured I would try to reduce a little bit of that static background noise. Let me know how it sounds. Is it any different? Hopefully it's an improvement. So I went on a business trip recently, and while I was kind of sitting, waiting, killing time, I decided to touch base with one of my old friends. And the conversation that ensued was just bizarre and worthy of making a video about. So something of a recap on this friend. I've mentioned her only in passing in older videos. Basically, I dated this girl when I was off and on dating my ex-wife before she and I had ever gotten married. During the time that I was with this woman, she was aware that I was actually still in a relationship with my ex-wife. Furthermore, my ex-wife knew that I was seeing that other woman, so, nobody gave a crap. They all knew about each other. The attitude of my ex-wife was, as long as you go to work and pay my bills, you do whatever you want. Like I said, that was before she and I had gotten married, before there were any kids between us. Granted, it really didn't change once we got married, but that's a story for another day and one that I partially already covered. The point was, while I was with this friend, this other woman, she didn't care that there were other women involved. So what's the deal with this girl? Why is she relevant? Well, she and I had hooked up a couple of times, gone out on half a dozen dates maybe. When I first met her, she had a decent body on her. Granted, I think she'd had 3 kids at that time, but she was still attempting to take care of herself. Kind of an unusual woman, especially in appearances. She was tan-skinned, dark, almost burnt brown hair, and the lightest blue eyes you've ever seen. It was very unique. And it wasn't contacts either, like genuine blue, just bright, bright blue eyes. She was quirky in the sense that her attitude fluctuated a lot. Now, she was fine with everything we were doing together right up until the point where I got a call from her on the phone, and the ex-wife was in the background yelling about something. It was obviously not a happy situation, but something about hearing another woman yell at me turned her off to the idea, and she didn't want to see me anymore. Fast forward a few years, and you have me in a relationship with 2 separate women living together in a household all at the same time. Well, she reaches out and makes contact with me just to kind of see how I'm doing, and finds out that I'm involved with 2 women and is somewhat apprehensive about it, but respects it and just kind of moves on with her day. Now, there's a whole lot of details I could give about this woman and conversations that I had with her that'll give more context, but it's so scattered in between the years of time that went from when I was married, before I was married, till now. It's so much to put into one video. In the beginning, for example, there was a conversation she had where she said the exact words, "I don't understand why men are out doing any other things except in my bedroom with me, sleeping with me." That all these guys that she liked for some reason had something better to do. She admitted to me during the earlier time in our friendship that she was, what, quote-unquote nympho, that she loved sex so much that she craved it constantly and wanted male attention anywhere she went. It makes sense too, because she had several kids from several different men. Well, sense in the context that it explains her situation, let's say. She was probably nearing her late 20s when I met her, and she didn't exactly have a good run at it from the start, so you can imagine now she looks pretty much like she was hit by a bus. I've seen pictures of her. She put on probably 100 extra pounds of weight, but supposedly she had breast implants. I mean, I guess that counts for something. So anyway, when I reached out to her just to say what's up, see how she was doing, talk about what was new, the conversation about me having dated those 2 women got brought up. I don't recall how. I guess I could look at the text to see, but nonetheless, we started talking about the past. And before I knew it, I started getting this just verbal lashing about how disgusting and horrible I was that I would ever be in a relationship with 2 separate women, that I would somehow trick them into the idea. Granted, of course, there's no way she would have been updated about my MGTOW status or the current state of my life. I wasn't going to tell her that crap, especially not after she had lashed out at me, right? Well, after we went through a heavy set of novel-length text messages, she was trying to push this whole moral authority narrative on me about how I was some kind of toxic, disgusting person, and that she honestly believed it was a phase that I was going through and that someday I was going to change. Now, she was referring to the time when she had reached out to me to kind of make contact and found out that I was in 2 separate relationships at the same time, all living together. But this is the very same woman who was willing to be in a relationship with me and another woman. So at that point, I get really curious and I start, prodding, like exactly why my life choices are an issue to her and why the whole situation with them was even a problem in the first place. What did it matter? Who cares how many women I'm with or whether or not I'm with a woman in the first place? If any of you guys are already catching up to what might be happening here, you know it's coming any minute. So the conversation progresses and I go through, the typical questions that would pertain to that kind of like if a person's poly or is issues with being poly. I asked her things like, well, wait a second, do you have issues with threesomes? And she goes, of course not. Okay, so do you have issues with people living together as roommates? Well, of course not. None of what she was saying made any sense about why my life choices at that time would have been an issue for her. And I kept pressing and pressing and pressing. Finally, she came out with it and tells me, Marcel, I just can't do this anymore. I loved you back then, but I can't be with you anymore. I just can't do it. And I'm like, well, wait a second here. First of all, what's with this love talk? Second of all, you can't break up with me. We haven't dated in like 8 years. You're a little late to the party, honey. Finally, why in the crap would you tell me you loved me now when it makes absolutely no difference and yet didn't say anything at all when it might have had a small impact on the relationship? Well, to sum things up, there was a small amount of her backpedaling and trying to explain her situation. I tried to give her an opportunity to talk her way through it, but in the end, she shut down comms with me. So if anybody's confused, I can explain what I believe happened. She met me towards the tail end of the carousel, out when she was hooking up with a ton of different guys and had no interest in settling with this young, strapping snake that had decent money and plenty of time to spend with her. And now that she's in her late 30s or so, she's hit the wall hard, and she's having these urges to actually hook up with somebody and keep them around. She reached out to me thinking that, we could have those long conversations and fun night talks and all sorts of other stuff that we used to have. She took the fact that I was with 2 much younger, much more attractive women that were all living with me very personally because she thought that I was probably the type of person that would never amount to anything. One night stand kind of material. But she literally waits until the very last minute, the last second of our friendship as far as she was concerned. Now, whether or not that changes months or years down the road is irrelevant. In her mind, she ended our friendship and somehow, weirdly, our relationship, which kind of implies to me that she never really got closure. And that's sad, because I would have been happy to find a way to give her closure if she needed it. But she waits until that last minute to confess that she loves or loved me in the same sentence that she is quote-unquote breaking up with me even though I haven't seen her in person in almost a decade. So for me, this is the perfect example of sour grapes. Now, if I could have been with her, or if I had been willing to be with this woman after everything she had done and been through and her mileage, she wouldn't care about my life choices in the past. More importantly, the only reason my polyamory was an issue now, but wasn't an issue then, is because now she's looking for an actual commitment. Her kids are all moving out, families moving away, elders are dying off, there's nobody around to spend time with. Granted, I'm sure she'll find a way to make it up with in dogs. Oh, for the sake... Okay, sidebar note to all of this. The last time I actually visited her at her house, she had probably 20 dogs. They were all smaller than a football. And these little beasts, as I was making my way into her house, were snipping at me the entire time. I wanted to launch one of them over a fence. Poorly trained, they were like a herd of dogs out in front of her house. It was disturbing. And every last one of them had that just sharp, ear-piercing bark, and they were all screeching at me at the same time. It was so bad. I mean, I wanted to catch up with an old friend, but it was so bad, I almost had to turn around and leave. I mean, even as a python, I usually get along with animals, but dang, it was ridiculous. What do you guys think? Was she compensating for something? Anyway, moving on is something of a summary. This felt to me like a pure example of a woman who starts out on the carousel, runs her time through it, and then later on in life decides and realizes that she wasted all of her time. Then she goes through her phone book and her Facebook and starts reaching out to any of the guys that she left or lost in the past. And the ones that say no to her are dicks. They're dirtbags. They're horrible people because they don't have the time or the energy to put up with her. Furthermore, this whole concept of saying they love you when they break up is just a weapon. It's a tool to harm the other person greater, to mess with their head. If the relationship or / friendship were going well, she never would have said that to me. It would have never come out of her mouth. She would have milked it every last inch of the way. Come to think of it, there was a point where this woman even said to me back when we first met up that, yeah, Marcel, at some point you're going to tell me you love me. Yep, it's going to happen eventually. She was actually that egotistical, and you better believe I threw it in her face. She lost that bet. So, leaving out all of the concepts of MGTOW, but knowing what was going on, I red-pilled the crap out of her. I said everything on my mind about the way she was acting and what she was actually doing. Now, I guarantee it all fell on deaf ears, but it felt good saying it. Quite literally calling her out on her crap. But honestly, don't fall for that. Especially in circumstances where the woman doesn't say love or hasn't expressed love until the minute they want to leave you. All that is them sticking a fork in you right after they've roasted you. It's just putting a little salt on the wound. It's a vile, disgusting psychological trick and is frankly despicable. Any woman that does that is more than worthy of being walked away from and doesn't deserve any further attention. And any guy who's going to take that comment of love and turn around and try and fix the relationship because of it is being a fool. Because if they actually loved him, they would have said it when it mattered. Now, for any of those who are wondering why I didn't mention anything about ownership or the possessive nature of women and how this woman probably was bitter because she seemed like she owned me, it's because I'm saving that concept for a video I'm about to make. Yes, if you were thinking that, I do agree, even years after we had dated, she still, in a way, felt like she owned me. But like I said, I'm going to cover that in my next video. I hope you all enjoyed this topic. If you want to hear more like it, hit that big thumbs up, subscribe, share. Check out some of the channels I have down below by the green check marks. Until next time, this has been Marcel.